you point out in a recent column that the fight over the Manhattanization of San Francisco has been going on since the 80s. Yeah, and was like Quentin Kopp one of these people that was kind of pushing this? I think I remember Jello Biafra talking about.
Yeah, this goes back actually to the 50s and 60s.
Oh.
And it actually goes back to the immediate post-war era when, okay, I'll try to make this long story short. During World War II, of course, the federal government, there was a War Powers Board that was set up that basically seized control of everything: industry, business, the war effort, the military, and the generals and the politicians worked together to basically turn the U.S. into a wartime economy, and that involved a lot of centralized planning. Right, and that's what happened in the Bay Area. They said, okay, the people, we're going to, first of all, the Japanese people in Japantown, we're moving them to concentration camps. We are sending trains into the deep south to try to get black people to move to San Francisco to work in the shipyard. They're going to live here. They're going to work here. And then, and it worked in the sense that we won the war. But after the war, these planners didn't want to stop. Mm-hmm. And they realized, they thought, okay, let's look at the San Francisco of the future in the post-war era. And let's look at, why are people in Manhattan so rich? Why is real estate so valuable in Manhattan? Well, it's because of European trade, right? What's going to be a bigger market, Europe or the Pacific Rim, right? So let's organize the Bay Area. And they actually created a group called the Bay Area Council that still is around. And there were various other committees but they literally sat around in Ben Swig's suite at the top of the Fairmont Hotel, which he used to own. And they took a map of San Francisco and they looked at it and they said, okay, downtown San Francisco is going to be a high-rise office center for finance, insurance, real estate, and trade with the Pacific Rim. All right. The worker bees are going to live in the East Bay and Contra Costa County. We're going to build BART to funnel them all into downtown, which is why BART only works to funnel people from the suburbs into downtown. Mm-hmm. Right? And what we're going to do is we're going to build as dense and as tall as we can, because when you do that, the land becomes more valuable.
Yep.
And no one ever held a public hearing and said, let's turn San Francisco into Manhattan West. It just happened in secret. This is why for example, they said a world-class city like Manhattan needs a convention center. So let's demolish 10,000 units of affordable single-room occupancy housing south of Market, and let's turn that into a convention center, right? Let's redevelop the Western Addition by driving all of the black people out, right? This was all planned, but it wasn't. The public didn't know about it. So it wasn't until the 60s, the early 70s, that people started looking around and saying, wait a minute, this city is changing dramatically and no one asked me.
Right.
And that's when the what we call Manhattanization movement really started on many, many fronts. But the thing to remember is it wasn't about stopping housing. And the YIMBYs say, oh, you people have always wanted to stop housing. That's actually not true. In fact, in the 80s, and I was here, in the 80s, we argued that if you're going to build offices and put more people in here, you need to build housing for them. We had something called the Office Housing Production Program, which would require office developers to build housing at the same time. Dianne Feinstein was mayor, and she hated it because the developers didn't like it, and she liked anything the developers liked. So that never really got off the ground in the way that it should have, because Dianne Feinstein's attitude was, the more development we have downtown, the more money comes into the city. Well, what actually happens is the more the price of land goes up, which is why we started to see displacement and gentrification following this in the 80s and into the 90s. So this actually has a long, long history, but it was never about stopping housing. It was about stopping office creep into the neighborhoods, right? About stopping projects that would drive up the price of land so high that only rich people could afford to live here. Right? And that's why we called it the Manhattanization of San Francisco, because obviously in Manhattan, it's the densest urban area in the United States. And the land is incredibly valuable, and therefore prices are incredibly high. So that's what that was the roots of this whole battle. And it's still going on today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So crazy how it continues on, especially, yeah. I keep hearing over and over again too, like, you had your chance and now we have this issue. But I also remember too, a lot of the homeless issues being started after the Twitter tax break, because people came in just buying buildings left and right and kicking people out. And I would say that was more of an issue more of a reason we have a homeless crisis than anything else.
Well, interesting. I moved to San Francisco in 1981, and there were not a lot of homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'd always get, and I volunteered at a community information center called the Haight-Ashbury Switchboard, and you'd always get some guy, and they were always guys, they were always young guys, who would hitchhike into San Francisco and come to the switchboard and think it was still the 60s, and the diggers were still here, and we're going to find them a crash pad, and they realized very quickly that the summer of love ended a long, long time ago. It's not the 60s anymore, and either they would stay, find a job, get a place to live, sleep in the park a couple nights, and go home. But we didn't have long-term homelessness, right? That started with Ronald Reagan, and with tax cuts for the rich, and with an end to the social safety net. I mean, back in the day, you could get $350 a month plus food stamps if you were an indigent adult. Welfare, $350 a month cash plus $100 food stamps. A room in a residential hotel was $20 a week, $30 a week. You got enough money through welfare, SSI, whatever, to live in San Francisco and to not be on the streets. So then, of course, due to all of this speculation and tech booms and everything else, the price of even SRO housing went way, way up. SROs were converted to tourist hotels, despite efforts to stop it. And the social safety net collapsed. And that's when we start to see long-term homelessness. I mean, it really is a result of economic inequality. And it's not a result of San Francisco not building enough housing because, and by the way, let me stop for a second here. Every time somebody says, and I fall to it myself, San Francisco needs to build more housing. It's like, no, San Francisco doesn't build any housing. I wish we did. I wish the city built more public housing. We know how to build public housing now. It was a problem in the 60s. We know how to do it now. I wish the city did build housing. Mm-hmm. Developers build housing.
That's right.
Developers build housing. The city doesn't build housing. And developers build housing. Well, nonprofit developers build housing for affordability, but private market rate developers build housing for one reason, and it has nothing to do with housing. Profit.
That's right.
All they care about is return on investment. And it's not like the days of, It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart, where you go to the local savings and loan and borrow the money to build a house. No, this money is coming from international speculative capital. It's coming from hedge funds. It's coming from pension funds. It's coming from insurance companies. And international speculative capital goes one place, where the return is highest. Mm-hmm. And for many, many years, the highest return was office buildings. Then the highest return started becoming luxury condos in San Francisco, Manhattan, LA, and Vancouver, BC. Mm-hmm. And that's where the return was high. So that's what got built, right? Now, none of that returns the highest. So that money's going someplace else. It's going into, AI stocks. It's going into wherever, right? But it's not going into building anything because the return on investment isn't high enough. Yeah. And the developers are saying, when rents go up another 20% in San Francisco, not that they're not high enough, when rents go up another 20%, maybe the return on investment will be high enough that we'll start building some more luxury housing. That's just how that's the reality of how the housing market works and how modern late stage capitalism works. It's all about return on investment for speculative capital.